Good morning, everyone, and welcome to Good Story Live. I'm Ginger. What is it? It's July 16th, Thursday, and we've got a good show for you today. You'll notice it's just me this morning. Jesse is unfortunately under the weather today, but it doesn't matter. We've still got a wonderful lineup for you. We've got artist Stella Chang, who will be joining us in a little while. Hi, Stella. How are you this morning?
Hey, wonderful. Happy to be here.
Good. Wonderful, wonderful, wonderful. Well, Stella's going to join me in just a moment. But I thought since I don't have Jesse with me today and I have nobody to ask about books or movies aside from Stella, which we're going to get all into her art and how she and I met, I thought actually that I would kick off with the story of how Stella and I met and how I came to find her, actually, because it's a pretty good story. I feel like it is. You guys can let me know in the comments. So, Stella is an artist. She did a wonderful watercolor portrait for me. And it's a portrait of Jesus. And so, how I even had the idea for this image, this portrait, was so I am Reiki attuned. I'm Reiki 1 and Reiki 2 attuned. And if I have any other Reiki practitioners or anybody else that has gone through the attunement process, you know that during your attunement process, you go on this journey of kind of meeting your spirit guides or meeting one of your spirit guides or guided meditation, we'll say. And so in Reiki 1, I remember going through the process and going through this guided meditation and not really meeting anyone. I remember going through the process and meeting Mary. And part of why, like, some of this is I talk about Mary and Jesus, and I talk about Mary and Jesus as a person that's not a religious person. So please do not necessarily take this in the context of speaking of them coming from the aspect of Catholicism or Christianity. They are just guides that happen to work and present themselves to me. But so in Reiki 1, I met Mary and thought that was okay, kind of weird, especially not weird, but just different. I don't know that I was prepared for that. Being a person, again, that is not necessarily a religious person. So moving forward, about a year later, I was getting ready to go through the process of Reiki 2 attunement. And leading up to the Reiki 2 attunement, I remember having a dream one night of this painting. I was painting this painting. I had no idea in the dream what I was painting, but it was this beautiful watercolor image with all varying shades of blue. And it was very kind of, I would call it romantic and kind of dreamy in style, not something. I am not an artist by any means. So I had no idea what what it was going to be. And the more and more in this dream that I painted this image, uh, I realized that it was the face of Jesus. And I was like, whoa. Had I ever seen this image. And actually, I might post a picture on our website so that way you can see it. If you actually go back to the promo of the introducing Stella as our guest this week, you can see one of the renditions that she did for me, and it is absolutely beautiful. I have another 2 or 3 that she did for me as well. But so I had this dream. I thought, oh man, that would be a really cool painting at some point to have. But I had no idea how I would find it or anything. And I really, at that point, it was just a dream, something that I thought would be cool. So moving forward, maybe a month or so. I don't remember the time frame between the dream to Reiki 2 attunement, but I go through Reiki 2 attunement and I go through the same guided meditation that I went through in my first attunement process. And in the second attunement process, on this guided meditation, you are essentially traveling up to this door. You walk through this door or you open this door and there's where you'll meet one of your guides, or there's where you'll see something. So I remember opening the door in the second process, and I opened the door and I saw nothing. I turned back around, and then I turned back to go out of this room in my dream, or not my dream, my meditation. And then felt the tug to pull back, and there was Jesus sitting on this bench waiting for me. And it was kind of like, oh, okay. I was taken aback. I felt really emotional about it. And again, it was very I don't even know what the proper word to describe it as, being someone again that is more spiritual in nature than anything else. So once I got through Reiki to attunement and realized that, okay, there was maybe some significance to this dream that I had in this painting, I set out on the mission to find somebody to help me bring this piece to life. And I had no idea where to start. So I did as any millennial, I feel like, would probably do, and went to Instagram. And all I did was I typed in and I searched for watercolor artist or watercolor, and searched through the images that popped up via the hashtag. And Stella was the only person that I reached out to about this. And because I saw her work and it was absolutely beautiful, and to me was perfect it was a perfect representation of the dream. And I thought that she would be the perfect person to bring this to life. So I reached out to her, and the rest, as they say, is history. She responded, and that's the story of how I found you. I don't even know if I told you that story or went in depth when I reached out to you, Stella.
Actually, no. That's why I look at my face. I'm like, oh my gosh. Wow. That's amazing.
Yeah.
I have no idea.
Yes. So it was a lot of it was a new process for me. Stella did a custom piece for me. Like I said, I had never commissioned or worked with an artist before, but after going through the attunement process with Reiki and having this dream and realizing, okay, so there's some significance to seeing Jesus in the dream and also him being a guide, I was
Right.
like, well, I need to find somebody. And you were, like I said, the only profile that I looked at. I looked through
Oh,
watercolor on
wow.
Instagram, that feed that
Yeah.
popped up, and you were the first person that I saw and the only person that I communicated with about it. And it is a
Wow.
stunning. Yeah.
Well, thank you so much. I honestly feel so honored. I'm not going to lie. When I first got your message, I was a little bit confused because I don't know if I ever share with you. I think you reached out to me back in 2019, I want to say. That was actually, I think it was 2019. That was actually the first year I decided to do art full time. Not gonna
Really?
lie. Yes. So when I got your request, I'm like, oh no, can I really make this happen? And I ended up painting 7 different portraits of Jesus Christ because I just didn't want to fail you. And I say to myself, out of the 7, there has to be one that will work. And I'm glad
Oh
you
yeah, and
picked one.
I ended up
Yeah,
buying 3 of I ended up buying
you
3 of
did.
them. I
Yeah,
loved them. You did a phenomenal job.
thank
It's, I
you.
can imagine it's a very, like, because you have somebody request like Jesus, and he's such a strong religious figure, right? In
Oh yeah,
Christianity,
yeah.
Catholicism, and then there's also the I don't know, there may have been some feelings about that too, like there's a weightiness to that, right? Um,
Oh yeah, I didn't want to
so
mess it up, that's for sure.
I was so appreciative that you agreed to take it on.
It was kind of like, you know what? There is fear, but you had to push
Mm-hmm.
past it. And like I said, because that was the first year I decided to really do art full time, I say to myself, you know what, just do it and see how far you can push it. I'm just so glad you
Mm-hmm.
actually like 3 of them. So
Oh yeah,
yeah.
I loved them. So to give you a little bit of background around Stella, she you were born in San Jose, California, and then grew up between
Yep.
the U.S., Taiwan, and Canada, right? I know
Yep.
you attended New York University, right? And you
Yep.
studied studio art. You
Yep.
also received a letter of recognition from the Queen of Fashion herself, Anna Wintour, which
I did.
is
I did.
amazing, right? And then,
Thank
as you
you.
said, you started to pursue an art career as an artist full time back in
Yeah.
2019.
Yeah.
And like I said, if you haven't seen her work, I will put the link to her website and how to get connected with Stella in the show notes, which you can see in the description below after the show's over, or over on goodstorylive.com. But, you know, how did you always know you wanted to pursue art? I guess let's start there. Did you always know that you wanted to pursue art?
You know, it's funny. I want to say yes, but it wasn't a very conscious decision. It was more like, you know that famous saying that every child is an artist until the age of 7, and then something happens, and then they just kind of let that go. You know, I'm one of those children, but I never let it go. But until reality sets in, you know, so I went to art school because I just couldn't stop, you know, painting, drawing, and creating cool stuff in my head. But I mean, with an arts degree, it's like there was no job. So I did go to art school. You know, I did wanted to become an artist, but you know, the reality was there was very little job opportunities for an artist. So to answer your question, yes, but the reality was no, because that's how I ended up getting to fashion. Yeah.
So you got involved. So you knew you wanted to be an artist, which is beautiful, but you kind of had that reality of, is this really something I can do? And I think if we're around the same age, if you know, grew up, art wasn't necessarily a career path that you could easily
right.
go down, which is how you got into fashion. So what, talk to me, were you able to integrate your art into fashion? What exactly did your career in fashion kind of look like?
Yeah, that's actually a really, really good question. So I went to school and my main focus was actually illustration because I wanted to be a manga artist, you know, the Japanese comic book artist. That's all I ever wanted to be. I'm still trying to make that happen. And so I can draw things just like out of my head. I don't really need a reference. So what happened at the time? So I graduated 2006. Now everyone knows how old I am. So what happened? Oh yeah, right. So I couldn't get a job, and my family was going through a pretty hard financial time. This was literally 2 years before the economic crash. And so fashion came calling because at the time, I don't know if people remember, they started doing a lot of collaboration with, real artists. Murakami with the Louis Vuitton collaboration was the biggest thing still. And so they needed a designer who can actually draw by hand and can draw very, very well, like the old fashioned illustrations that you see on those editorial magazines. So I was hired almost immediately. They're like, "Oh, you can draw. Okay, can you draw a bag?" I'm like, "Of course I can draw a bag. How easy is that?" So that's what I did. And it was a lot of money for a student. I did a whole collection, 12 styles of different handbags for $3,000. I was like, "Oh, money, of course." I was making so much more than all my friends who just graduated from college. And then they came back to me. They were like,
as an artist, I'm sure.
As an artist, yeah. And then the same company came back and said, "Can you actually design bags?" Now here's a catch. Drawing a bag versus designing a bag, two completely different things. You had to actually know how to construct a bag, how to sew it, how to cut patterns. I have no clue. I didn't know the difference. So I say yes, because it was even more money. That was pretty much how I started my career as a handbags and small leather goods designer. And and I ended up having to beg my mom to, spend money, buy me a ticket, because I never went to fashion school. I have no clue how to even construct anything. And that ticket was to get me to fly to China for the first time in my life. I've never been there before. And so I went and lived in a freaking factory for a year.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. That was pretty much how I started my career. So very unusual indeed.
For sure. But I mean, talk about having some determination to, again, hop on a plane and go over to China and learn how to construct a bag, learn all of that so that you could then go through the process of actually designing a bag. That is amazing.
Yeah, it was pretty insane.
So is that what you were doing, working in fashion essentially up until 2019, or were
Yeah, I pretty much I spent the first 4 years of my career learning all the product developments and production, and because my family's from Taiwan, so I actually speak Chinese, so they
Mhm.
were just like, "Oh, perfect, learn everything, then come back to America." And so yeah, I was like overseas for 4 years, and at the time the crash happened, so it was actually really difficult for me to come back and get a corporate job. So that was the reason
Mhm.
why I ended up spending 4 years not just in China, but basically flying to Italy, flying to Japan, learn the design here, do the production there. So that was the first 4 years of my career. Then afterwards, when I came back, it was like, that's it, no more factory, I just want to be a designer. So I climbed the corporate
Mhm.
ladder. And 2012, me being me, also still pretty young, I was like, what would happen if I designed a collection for myself? So I did. And that was actually the collection that got in a Wintour's letter of recognition, which I still have. It's like tiny little thing, like on hard cardstock. I love it. And but it's just kind of crazy how my career evolved. Yeah.
For sure. I mean, again, receiving a letter of recognition from Anna Wintour, that's got to be not. I can't say that there's probably many people that get to that you're going to
Oh,
meet in
it was
everyday
amazing.
life that get
Yeah,
to
I
that
mean,
have that accolade.
yeah, I was
So that's
blown away
wonderful.
by it. Yeah, and I thought that,
Mhm.
oh, this means that I can start my own brand. Well, what I didn't realize is you kind of need millions of dollars to do that. So, so yeah, I did it, didn't go anywhere, but I
Mhm.
still had the letter of recognition. Then I just said, just stay put, help other people, help
Mhm.
yourself. So I climbed the corporate ladder like everybody else. And 2015, I went solo and started my own design studio. But even then, I started to feel really restless because
Mhm.
at the end of the day, I love creating things. But, when it involves consumer products like bags, there's a lot of limitations and boundaries and rules I have to follow. So it's never really a free process. And that was when I
Sure.
realized, what? I need to do my own thing. And so very slowly, 2015 to 2018, I, pretty much my bread and butter business was helping other people launch their own brand, but at the same time, slowly building up a artistic portfolio so that I can return back to the art world. It was a very slow process. And
Mhm.
literally everything you saw on my Instagram was created by me around 2017 to 2019. And I didn't even fully step away from fashion until 2019.
Wow. So,
Yeah.
and you mentioned part of that, I think part of, and correct me if I'm wrong, if I heard correctly, but part of that drive to maybe step away from that and start to create more of your own space to truly be an artist kind of came from the limitations of what you could create within the fashion industry, right? So,
Yeah.
which brings
Yeah.
up like, do you ever experience now that you're out of that, maybe
Hmm.
now and more so in your own space, um do you experience painter's block? Like, how writers experience writer's block? This was a question that Jesse had and he wanted to make sure that I asked you.
Mm,
And if
okay.
you do, like, how do you move past that?
I do. And it comes in the weirdest time. I just learn to ride with it. I don't force it. Meaning that some artists and some writers, some musicians, they try to force themselves to still create when they hit that block. I don't even do that
Mhm.
anymore because it's pointless. When it comes, is usually because I'm just mentally and physically exhausted because the whole creative process, I need to keep my mind open. It's very spiritual, and I
Yeah.
just walk away. Yeah, I just literally walk away and I try not to freak out. And I say, okay, let me live my life a little. Let me go watch a movie, hang out with my friends, meditate more. And when it hits me, it hits me. I'll come right back and I'll go crazy again.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Like, I love that. As a person that also like experience like, you bring up a good point, right? Like burnout.
Yeah.
Whenever you're trying to create, if you're trying to create from a place of burnout, I feel like that's when block, be it writer's block, painter's block, um, any sort of artist block that you encounter, it's because you haven't taken the time to kind of consume and just live life. Because when we
Yeah.
consume and live life, that's when I think inspiration strikes.
Absolutely, absolutely. And I don't know if you experience the same thing when you do Reiki practice, which is I always felt like for any type of creative person to create anything in life, you kind of have to preserve a bit of a space in your mind and your heart, and you use that space to absorb what's happening around you, even consciously or unconsciously. Then you let it come out into something that's discernible and tangible on a piece of paper, or it could be music, or it could be anything. At least that's
For
how my
sure.
brain works.
Oh
Yeah,
yeah. It's kind of like you have to go out of shift from creating mode to, I'm going to say, receiving mode, and kind of again just
yeah,
being a sponge to the
yeah, yeah,
external
yeah.
world, so that again you can kind of take in everything that's coming in and then let it percolate to then be inspired to transform that into something else, for sure.
Absolutely. That's why I always tell, like, especially back in fashion, I always tell the younger ones, like, stop forcing it, stop pushing yourself, working nonstop, because you're gonna run out of ideas and everything you do will look like the previous thing that you just did.
Sure.
Yeah.
Sure. Now, you have also a very, again, unique style. I love your work.
Oh,
You
thank
use
you.
ink and watercolor, right? And
Yeah.
then you blend digital with that,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
How did you even begin? Like, how did you even begin in your own like process to find that niche and find that that's what you really enjoy working with?
I don't really have an answer to that, to be honest with you. Okay, I think in order for me to kind of explain that is I'm one of those creative people. I don't really label what I do in the sense that I don't say I'm
Mm-hmm.
only a fine artist. So all I ever do is oil painting. And so
Mm-hmm.
I'm also one of those artists. I don't need a reference to draw things. They just kind of pop up in my head. And in my culture, that's called mind's eye. Some people are born with it, some people are not, and that's totally fine.
Mm-hmm.
So what happens is that I see all these images in my head and they come in processions and I can't stop them. Thank goodness my parents never medicate me. Thank you. Thank you, mom. Anyway, the whole point I was saying that is that when I first got into art school, the only question I asked myself was, I see all these images, but how do I get them out? Like,
Mm-hmm.
can I use watercolor? Can I use ink? And what other machines are out there? What other programs are out there I can use so that I can capture this as faithfully as possible and put it on paper or animate them? And so
Sure.
it was a very practical process. I never thought, oh, watercolor cannot mix with digital, or ink illustration should never mix with, I don't know, 3D printing, which is also what I do. I'm just
Mm-hmm.
like, I want this image in my head to exist in real life. What are the tools? Let me just pick them up and start mixing them. And that was it.
Yeah. And I love that. I love that the way that you described it, because it is very much like, how do I take what's in my mind's eye and
Yeah.
not limit it to the medium, right, that I'm going to try, but how can I achieve the vision that is in my head? And that's in the process of having you, again, trying to find somebody to do the painting for me. I was like, I know this looks like watercolor to me.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like this isn't a traditional like acrylic or oil paint. This isn't a digital image. Like, okay. And that was the process again that started it for me.
Yeah. And
Now go ahead.
go ahead. I was just
I was
going
gonna
to
say,
say that. Oh, I think there's a slight delay. I was just going to say that you gave me so much confidence. I probably never shared this with you because you were, I think, my second commission, and I have never done a serious subject up to that point. And after
mhm.
you took three out of the seven, I literally was celebrating with a bottle of champagne in my little apartment. And my husband and I were just like, yeah, you can do this. You can do this. She loves it.
Oh,
So thank you
yay!
so much. I really appreciate it because I really needed that in my heart. Yeah,
Good. Look, we were meant to find each other. I totally believe
I
that. Like,
know.
again, absolutely meant to find each other because you were, like I said, were the perfect person to bring to life the vision that I had,
Thank
and
you.
you now, right, looking through your work, you do, like I said, the watercolor, you do the floral prints, you do,
Yeah.
you do a lot of different types of pieces, right? But they all have your signature, what I would say, style. Do you
Okay.
have a type of piece that's your favorite to create?
Oh
Like, do you
my
have a
God.
favorite piece?
That's so hard. I have so many favorites.
It's like asking you to pick your favorite child or your favorite,
I
like,
know, right? Like,
do you know,
how do you pick?
how do you pick it?
Um, I do like Mindscape. I don't know if you saw those big aluminum metal prints I
Mm-hmm.
recently showcased at the other art fair in Brooklyn. I would say for now, in this moment, this collection is my favorite. But who knows? 2 weeks later, I probably will change my mind. Yeah,
And that's okay. That's how it should be. I feel like you go through kind of like this evolution in your creative process for sure.
I do.
Um,
Yeah.
and kind of to piggyback on this, how how do you know when a piece is finished? Like, how do you keep yourself
Ah,
from, do you know, like, let me just tweak this, let me just add this, let me just make
yeah.
this adjust. How do you know when a piece is finished?
When my husband yells at me, no, no. Actually, he does though, but that's not really how I know. Uh, yeah, no, it's my process is very compulsive. It's almost like I cannot stop. But for most artists, it's the same
Mm-hmm.
situation. Um, I usually know when I run out of steam. Literally, I just exhaust myself mentally, emotionally, and physically. And I just stare at my computer screen or the artwork in front of me. I'm like, no more. And that's when I walk away because I literally gave it all I got. And
Mm-hmm.
and this is actually one side of me that's from design that I'm actually very grateful for because I noticed that not a lot of artists have this, which is the ability to stop. In fashion, we
Mm-hmm.
learn that time efficiency is, they're everything. So there's no such a thing as creating the perfect product and the perfect design. We are only striving to create something that the consumer can resonate with. And, because
That
perfection differs from person to person. And so I'm able to actually step away from my art and just said, yeah, I feel it. Okay, okay, it's good. And
mm-hmm.
I just walk out.
I
Yeah.
love that. I'm a big believer in done is better than perfect all
Oh
day,
yeah.
every
Oh
day.
my God.
Because if you live by this needs to be perfect, you can spend your lifetime creating and never putting out what you're creating into the world, right?
Yeah.
Which that's the
Yeah,
goal of creating,
you're
is sharing
absolutely
it.
right. I'm not going to name names, but I do know at least two artists within my circle. That's kind of the reason why, none of this stuff ever really launched because they never finished them. And literally every couple months they add another brushstroke. Every couple months they change the color of the background, and it's
Hmm.
never perfect. And eventually they kind of trash the work. It's a
Hmm.
horrible cycle. Yeah.
Yeah, it can very much so be for sure. Now,
Yeah.
you mentioned your background in fashion, right? Helping to really lend its hand to knowing when to stop and when to like leave a piece alone and how to be efficient and effective.
Yeah.
How do you feel has, or maybe the question is, has your experience in fashion and your experience working before you jumped fully into being an artist on your own, how has that helped you with that transition, if at all?
Oh my gosh. I could talk about this for days, but let me just pick like two key points. Number one,
Yeah.
I learned how pricing works and how to sell.
Hmm.
That's the most important thing. I know I'm gonna get myself into trouble when I say this. At the end of the day, art essentially on many levels is a product that's consumable by people. I know a lot of
Hmm.
people can't like they don't agree with that. They were like, art is very precious, it's an extension of myself, blah 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 blah. I agree. I totally agree. But if you want to make a living, you need to know how to sell it. And when you sell
Mm-hmm.
anything, it's a product, which means you need to know how to price it so you can feed yourself. Yeah,
For
and
sure.
it's that's probably the greatest lesson I took away from fashion, and that really helped inform my art business, because essentially I see it as a business. It is an extension of myself that I have no problem selling. You
That's
know, and
wonderful.
that's, yeah, that's the reality of it. And it shocked me a little bit when I see younger and older artists. They still struggle to figure out, number one, how do I even price it? How do I calculate my overhead, my cost of goods? All these terminologies like this, and I'm like, wait, what? You know, it's too hard. But then I
Mm-hmm.
realized that's because I already learned this from fashion business. And
Mm-hmm.
so another really important thing I took away from fashion is the understanding of human psychology. That is so important, because
For sure. Like
and you can
motivators to buy, like all of those types of things.
exactly,
Yes.
yeah, yeah. I think you mentioned to me you have a marketing background and you know exactly what I'm talking about, which
Mm-hmm.
is people need to resonate with this piece of artwork that's right in front of you. How do you tell that story? And how
Yes.
do you package it? And how do you gauge this person right in front of you and know exactly how to tell that story to that person? That's a huge skill set that I took away from fashion, even though I'm not even in sales.
Right. And it's probably right. You went to school for
Yeah.
art. Um,
Mm.
but it's probably not stuff that you learn
Oh
when
hell no!
you're
I'm sorry.
in.
No.
Yeah.
No, I don't know. I can only speak from my personal experience from New York University. I don't know how other art schools actually, how their curriculums are like, but I can tell you that in art school, at least the one that I went to, we never learn about
Mm-hmm.
business. I have no idea how to even sign contract with people. I have no clue there was such a thing as, art licensing agency. I didn't know anything about how to price anything and
Mm-hmm.
how to present myself as an artist. And I think that was one of the biggest reasons why most art students, 90% of us, basically couldn't find a job and still cannot find a job.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and
Because of
it's still happening
that
now
lack of
because of
skill
that.
set, that lack of. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, because unfortunately, and I don't know why art has become so, what's the word I'm looking for, entrenched in academia, in the sense of it's all about how to paint, how to capture the light,
Mm-hmm.
the technical aspect of how to produce art, which is great. Everybody needs to learn these skills. But at the end of the day, it is an industry, it is a career. You do have to learn the business aspect of things. Like I don't even
Mm-hmm.
know that there is a difference between, the type of tax you have to pay as an artist when you provide a service and when you sell a product. Two different types of tax depending on the state. And I think that's
Wow.
how we
Yeah.
always end up losing money because we didn't add that into our markup. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I mean, but and you're so right, right? Like you don't necessarily learn any of those skills that you need to be
No.
successful as you learn how to create and you hone those
Yeah.
skills, but you don't actually learn the skills to help yourself be successful as an artist if it's something you want to pursue on your own. Do you
Exactly.
feel like technology and social media is starting to shift that, or is it helping or is it hurting? Because I know there are a lot of
Hmm.
artists that are now right showing their process on social media, and some of them seem successful, uh,
Yeah.
but and I don't know that if they're not necessarily that this, but do you feel like social media and technology is helping you or hurting you in the process?
It depends on how you use it. The way I see social media, it's just like any other tools, like when the computer was first invented, when the fax machine was first invented, and cell phone, how are you going to use it
Mm-hmm.
to, further your career? And so that's number one. Number two is, what is your definition of being a successful artist? And that in itself is a huge debate, inside the art school and outside of the art school. I could tell you, like, the one single narrative in art school is that being successful means that people collect your art, but you can't really talk about selling because, being a selling artist is not being successful, which you're just like, wait, what? Well, you just told me, but I had to be able to sell. Yeah, so there's still that debate going on. But coming back to social media, what I can share with you is this, if your definition of being a successful artist is that you are sufficient, and then you can make enough money supporting yourself, you're literally, this is your job, and then you're able to support your entire family, and that's being successful, then, social media should really be a marketing tools that help you make connections, get in touch with galleries, agencies, showcase your work, and you're not afraid to use it to promote yourself. But, we do see, at least I do see, a lot of artists, young and old, they are not quite sure how to use social media. So they use it more so as a, oh, look at me type of tool that doesn't really generate anything for them. They may have a huge following, but how much of that following is actually translating to actual sales in life? That's a big question. Only they know. I have no idea. And I have also seen artists becoming what I call content generator creator, because their art is not selling. So they have no choice but to learn to become an influencer. So then, if you ever use the hashtag artist life, what do you see? Try it out after this, this segment.
I will.
You see a lot of, let's just put it this way, a lot of artists, men and women alike, who show less of their work but more of their bodies. Yeah. And so it's really up to how you use it, and what's your definition of it.
For sure. And that makes total sense. I mean, I think that goes back to what we were talking about earlier, where we mentioned earlier, it's, do you know how to resonate with people? Do you know how to market yourself, and your work, and all of those things? So absolutely.
Absolutely. And that's actually one of the things that my next 5-year goal, is that I'm working with a bunch of, experienced artists who's been around the block for 4 decades. And we're trying to launch a program that actually teaches younger artists, or even like mid-level career artists, how do you do all of this? Like the marketing, the business aspect, the money aspect, because it's just not being taught anywhere.
And that's wonderful. I mean, because to your point, like you said, it's not being taught anywhere. And if you guys can help create a space where, because I mean, I also know people in my own personal life, right? It's very easy to, I shouldn't say it's very easy. Everybody has something that they want to create, right? But it's taking that from creating it just for yourself to creating it to share, and how do you make that transition? And having a space that enables and teaches people how to do that, I think would be phenomenal. So
absolutely, bravo. Yes. Oh, thank you. Well, I'll let you know when it's launched.
Yes, please. Well, like I said, we're going to have all of the ways to get in contact with Stella, her website, in the description, both on goodstorylive.com, as well as in the description of both of these lives, because we're on Facebook and on YouTube. Yes, Stella, thank you so much. Stella also has been graciously given us a coupon code for GSL 10. Yes, for 10% off any of her artwork prints. Like I said, I will link to her website on goodstorylive.com, as well as in the descriptions. Please check them out. She's got several beautiful pieces. And like I said, if you want to see the portrait of Jesus that she did for me, or one of them, it's in the promo video. You can catch a glimpse of it there. And I will share a snapshot of some of the paintings that I have that she created for me on our website as well.
I love to see it.
Yes, they're beautiful. I gifted, so I have one of them. I gifted one to my Reiki mentor, because she also has a relationship with Jesus and works with him. And so I sent it to her without telling her about it. And she immediately, I sent it to her without telling her about it.
That's
And she
awesome.
opened it.
Oh my God.
Yeah. She told me, she's like, I'm crying. It's gorgeous. Thank you so much. So,
Thank
and
you.
then my mother also has one of them at her house, and she absolutely
Oh,
loves
that's
it too.
amazing.
It's
Yeah.
it is. And each one, so like I said, I got 3 of them. Each one found its way to the person that resonated most with that particular
Oh,
version
so
that you
interesting.
created. Yes, which is beautiful and I love. So thank you so
Honestly, the
much.
greatest, no, thank you so much. The greatest joy I can get as an artist is when I see, the collector loving the piece so much, get the perfect frame for it and put it on the wall, and I'm like, I done my job. Yeah,
Yes, you've
that's
definitely
how
done.
simple I am.
Yes, yes, I love that. Well, Stella,
Thank
thank you
you.
so much for coming on Good Story
Thank
Live. Thank you
you.
for being here with me. And like I said,
Thank you.
everybody that's watching, if you're interested, I will leave all of her information in the description and on Good Story Live. And we will see you next week on
All right.
June,
Thank
I
you
think it's the
so
23rd, guys. Thank you.
much. All right. Thank you guys. Bye.
Bye.